La Selección de México this weekend has announced their roster for their November games versus Uruguay and Paraguay. And this roster looks very promising. There are some returning players that we are happy to have back. Some new players whose call-up is, in my opinion, well-deserved. And players who we are extremely happy to see finally be excluded from the roster. In this video, I will analyze both the good and bad aspects of this roster and what to watch among the 26 players called up. And at the end, I will give a final grade for Javier Aguirre as the coach in how he established the roster for these games. So looking at the roster now, here are the 26 players Javier Aguirre has called up for Mexico's games this month. For the goalkeepers, the three goalkeepers called up are Luis Angel Malagon, Carlos Acevedo, and Tala Rangel. For the defenders, Aguirre has called up 7 defenders, 4 fullbacks, and 3 center backs. They are Cesar Montes, Johan Vasquez, Chiquete Orozco, and for the left back position, Mateo Chavez y Jesus Gallardo, and for the right back position, Israel Reyes and Kevin Alvarez. For the midfielders, Edson Alvarez, Eric Lira, Fidel Ambriz, Chiquito Sanchez, Orbelin Pineda, Ober Vargas, Marcel Ruiz, and Gilberto Mora are the players Javier Aguirre has called up. And lastly, for the offensive front, Piojo Alvarado, Diego Lainez, Raúl Jiménez, Germán Perterame, Armando Hormiga González, Chucky Lozano, Alexis Gutierrez, and Jorge Rubalcaba. Starting with the positives, Jorge Sanchez and Tronco Rodriguez were not called up and included in the roster. Yes! Yes! Finally, the 2 worst players on the team are finally not only being excluded from the starting 11, but from the team as a whole. And what makes it even better, especially in the case of Tronco Rodriguez, who it felt like he was untouchable in this team no matter how horrible he was finally excluded without it being due to an injury. Thank goodness, this needed to happen a long time ago. Jorge Sanchez has been awful as a starting right back as well. Offensively, Sanchez is awful with the ball and is a turnover machine. And while he has had good defensive performances in El Vasco system, Aguirre's strong defensive system still doesn't save Jorge Sanchez from himself and him still having awful performances on both sides of the ball. There are many examples we can refer to of Sanchez playing horribly for Mexico, but finally, it looks like his disastrous second half performance versus Colombia last month was the last straw for Jorge Sanchez. And Tronco Rodriguez, he has been given more chances and more appearances for Mexico than Hugo Sanchez, arguably one of Mexico's greatest players ever. He has played in 62 games for Mexico without scoring a single goal and only having 1 mediocre assist. And outside of that 1 assist that he got years ago, he has been so bad. Every time he was on the field, it was 11 versus 10 for Mexico. He would be so non-existent to where it felt like Mexico was playing down a player. And in the worst of cases, when Tronco Rodriguez played, it felt like a 12 versus 10 game because he was so bad for Mexico to where it actually helped the opposing team. Tronco's horrid performance versus Valencia last year was single-handedly why Mexico did not win that game. But for some reason, he kept getting called up. It was as if Tronco could score an own goal and still be part of the team. But with Aguirre leaving him on the bench in the most important moments, including in the final 2 games of the Gold Cup over the summer, it showed Aguirre did not trust Tronco Rodriguez, understandably so, and even less so after seeing how much better Marcel Ruiz and Gilberto Mora were in comparison. I, along with many fans, were at the point where if an injury was the only way Tronco would finally not be called up, so be it. Thank God, Chadley has finally been excluded and not called up without an injury occurring. May this be the end of his and Jorge Sanchez's careers with the national team. The only downside from this is that while I like the idea of calling up Israel Reyes, I still don't like how Aguirre is reluctant to call up Julian Araujo for the right back position. Even after Araujo played well in the Gold Cup, well, I don't think calling up Kevin Alvarez over a current Premier League prospect is ideal. This time, I will not complain a whole lot because just excluding Jorge Sanchez from the roster is already an upgrade for the defense here. As for the second positive thing from this roster, focusing on the midfield, and I mean, just not having Charlie in the roster is a positive thing that makes the midfield better already. But what is really exciting are the young players that have been called up along with the experienced European players in Edson and Orbelin. 17-year-old Gilberto Mora, after an amazing U20 World Cup campaign for him, returns to the senior team for these November games. He ended up fracturing his hand a few weeks ago, but is fortunately healthy enough to play and gain experience at the senior level. He has recovered enough to where he will be playing in these games. In the Gold Cup, Mora was more than good enough to start and play in the most important games, and he will look to finally get his first career goal and become the youngest goal scorer in the history of the Mexico national team. Ober Vargas, who also played very well in that tournament and has been excellent for Seattle Sounders, has been called up along with him. Fidel Ambriz, the 22-year-old playing for Rayados, has also been called up as well. This midfield overall looks very promising with a good balance of experienced players in Orbelin and Edson who are playing well in Europe right now, Marcel Ruiz playing well for Toluca, and the young prospects who are just coming off a great U20 campaign in Chile. And so I'm really looking forward to just seeing this midfield, how they perform, especially the young players getting very important minutes against top teams. As for the third positive thing in this roster, the return of arguably the two best players on the team, Raul and Edson Alvarez. Both players ended up not playing in October due to injury, but they have fortunately fully recovered and they have been playing well at their respective clubs and are back with the national team for these games. Raul's return is definitely one where Aguirre is glad to have him back on the team, especially with most of the other notable players on the offensive front out due to injury. Santi Jimenez, Julian Quiñones, Chino Huerta are all unable to play in these games due to injury. So having Raul Jimenez healthy is very much a good thing. Ending off the positive aspects from this roster with this final point, I really like how Javier Aguirre, as the head coach, is both willing to make changes and believe in the young prospects, which is something we didn't see in the last three coaches. Aguirre was finally willing to cut Jorge Sanchez and Tronco Rodriguez and call up two of the top prospects in Mora and Vargas. The past coaches treated them like vacas sagradas, but Aguirre finally made the decision that needed to happen here, with Jorge Sanchez and Charlie Rodriguez. Aguirre also called up a player that I was wanting to see get an opportunity in Jorge Rubalcaba. This is definitely Javier Aguirre trying to address the issues and needs in the winger position that have been a problem since the Gold Cup. And Rubalcaba, I think, is a good player to call up for that reason. Rubalcaba has been very good for Pumas, and when he did play in the January games in South America, Rubalcaba was one of the best players, well deserved for him, and now it looks like he will get to make his official national team debut in these games. I also love how El Vasco, amid the injuries in the offensive front to Quiñones, Santi, Alexis Vega, Chino Huerta, instead of just calling up a bunch of aging players like Sepulveda or Fulgencio just to fill the roster right now and give them the honor of saying, I got to play for the national team, he's actually taking the opportunity to call up young players to both develop and believe in them now and compete for a spot in the roster for 2026. With Santi injured, he is giving an opportunity to Hormiga Gonzalez, who has been on almost a goal per game pace. Well deserved for Gonzalez. He calls up Fidel Ambris, who, while he isn't a U20 prospect, is still a young player with potential. Aguirre is giving some notable young players a fair chance, and with it, there will probably be at least 2 or 3 who end up playing their way onto the 2026 team for the World Cup, along with Gilberto Mora. With that, the young players on this roster will definitely be ones to watch in these games. As for the negative aspects from this roster, while Aguirre is clearly willing to make changes and has been doing so, I wish he could do that a little bit more. I don't like that he called up Diego Lainez again. I feel Lainez doesn't quite have the form or confidence, and that's why he is indecisive with the ball. And we saw that in September and October. While he wasn't a major liability, he also was not a solution for the issues in the winger positions. That's why I would have rather seen Aguirre call up Osiel Herrera, who has been in much better form with Tigres and has shown that confidence and decision-making that Lainez seems to lack right now. I also would have liked to see Aguirre call up Elias Montiel over Chiquito Sanchez, and this is not because Chiquito has been terrible for the national team. I thought his performances in October were decent, but more so because Montiel, like Mora and Ober Vargas, is also considered one of Mexico's brightest prospects. He has been great at the club level for Pachuca, and as a younger player than Chiquito Sanchez, I do see Montiel as a player who can be more of a long-term solution. So why not call him up as well, since Mora and Vargas have already been called up as well. So I would have really loved to see the trio, Mora, Vargas, and Montiel, but unfortunately, we're only going to get Mora and Vargas. But hey, at least we got Mora and Vargas, better than nothing. I'm happy to have those 2 young players on the team. Another decision I did not like in this roster was Aguirre bringing Piojo Alvarado back, and I will also say the same thing for Tala Rangel. In my opinion, there are only 2 players from arguably Chivas' worst generation in history that deserve a call-up right now, in my opinion. Hormiga Gonzalez, who is on goal per game pace, and Hugo Camberos after his good performances in the U20 World Cup. Hormiga has been much better than Piojo Alvarado, and I also think Camberos could be a player who could possibly help solve that lack of creativity from the wingers we have been calling up in Piojo and Alexis Vega. Piojo has had plenty of opportunities, including just about all of the Gold Cup, but has failed to even provide one good assist or shot on target. It's time to call up someone newer and younger. I would have definitely rather see Camberos or Osiel get called up over Piojo at this point. As for Tala Rangel, while his form at the club level has improved along with most of Chivas as they compete for a Liga MX playoff spot, I still don't trust him at the national team level, where Rangel has been extremely shaky in the best of scenarios. Last year, he made his debut versus Uruguay, one of the same teams we will play this month, and had a horrible game. And his performance versus Switzerland in the summer prior to the Gold Cup was somehow even worse. And while I don't think he was at fault for the draw versus Ecuador and the penalty conceded, given it was mainly a bad turnover from Luis Romo, in September, he definitely had his mistakes versus Korea, and that goal conceded to Heung-min Son was definitely a bad look for him, given he caved and went to his knees instead of standing tall to block the shot. When it comes to Tala Rangel, I don't think he is good enough to be part of the national team right now, and I would still rather call up Guillermo Ochoa, given he is still playing quite competitively in Europe and has been in solid form with AEL Limassol. I have said this in past videos, and my opinion has still not changed. The goalkeepers I would be calling up if I were Vasco would be Malagon, who is in his best form and will likely be the starter. Ochoa, who is experienced, brings leadership, and is still the next best after Malagon. and Alex Padilla, who is arguably our best goalkeeper prospect, who is currently playing in Spain as a prospect for Bilbao. This way, the goalkeeper part of the roster is well balanced because I don't see Mexico having a well balanced goalkeeper roster with Tala Rangel included on it. He has not proven himself to be better than Ochoa right now or good enough in the long term. While I disagree with that part of the goalkeeper roster, I nevertheless do think it will still be a part of this team to watch in these games versus Uruguay and Paraguay. Given Vasco does like to rotate the goalkeepers, where Malagon will start one game and then he would have someone else, normally Talan Rangel, start in the second game. With three goalkeepers on the roster in Malagon, Acevedo, and Rangel, it will be interesting to see if he does the same thing. Will he start Malagon both games or only in one of the two games? And if so, will he start Tala Rangel in the other game? Or will Carlos Acevedo get a playing opportunity? If so, it will be a very important game for Acevedo as it will be his opportunity to make a good impression on Aguirre. The same can be said for Rangel. This might be his last chance to prove that he is good enough to be part of this team. We'll see what happens. There you have it, Mexico's roster for November, and I will give Javier Aguirre an A- grade for this roster selection. I love how he is willing to make adjustments, as well as call up and believe in the young players. Hopefully this will be something he and Rafa Marquez continue, and this, along with him winning both CONCACAF titles this year, the Nations League and the Gold Cup, was likely why he was recently nominated for FIFA's Best Men's Coach of the Year award. Congratulations to Aguirre for being nominated for such a prestigious award among coaches. As a Mexico fan, I could not be more happy for him, and Mexican fans everywhere should be happy about this as well. Congratulations, Javier Aguirre. With that, I am very excited for both games. These are not partidos moleros. These are games that will elevate the team, and they will be the first games with their new green home jersey that they will wear in the World Cup as well next year. So far, it seems Mexico fans and people everywhere really like the jersey. I also really like how it looks. It could possibly be the jersey of the tournament next summer. And I can't wait to see what they will look like on the players in their upcoming games. Hopefully they can get their first win in their new jerseys in one of these games. Andres from AA Sports. That will be all for this video. Leave your opinions on the roster in the comments below. To support my channel, leave a like on the video and subscribe, and it will help you stay informed on all the videos I post covering Mexican football. With that, thanks so much for watching and listening. Viva Mexico!